Is that something you experience? Like the feeling of maybe you're being judged or maybe feeling a little bit shame for what you're going through in your relationship?
Not right now, but in the beginning, yes. Extreme amount of judgment. You know, uh, you're talking about, I'm in a situation where not only did my partner cheat, now there's a child in the mix. First of all, you don't hear about that at all. It's not talked about. Why is it not talked about? Who's going to want to talk about that? No one's going to want to talk about that because it's going to make them feel embarrassed. And unless the conversation is going to be how you left, what most women, you don't really talk to most women who's been in my situation where infidelity take place and a child's being born. You don't hear about that. So I mean, I think that alone empowers me because I like to say there's always life after death. And for me, the situation, it was traumatic in the beginning, but I think it was traumatic because I was naive. I, 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 I put this person in this perfection box, and it was my own faults. I feel like I was more depressed and unhappy than I really needed to be because I made this person perfect. So when this situation happened, that's one reason why it was traumatic for me. But in the beginning, yeah, there was a lot of shame attached. I didn't want to talk about it. And that's one reason, too, that made me question if I wanted to stay because people were going to judge me, especially, you think of some of the relationship people out there that be like, you must think less of yourself if you're going to stay in a situation like that because how do you know if he's not going to do it again? And these are the type of questions I feel like people need to refrain from asking. You, no matter how great your relationship is or how bad it is, you don't know what somebody's going to do to you behind your back. And that's a question that can never be answered. And I know women, especially, we're victims to say, oh, he would never. You don't know what he would never do, girl. I mean, we really don't know what anybody would never do, let alone I was a child at one point in my life. I know some of the things I did behind my parents' back. So why are we now all of a sudden naive when we're adults and we think like your partner would never? You don't know what your partner would do. So I had questions of, do you think he's going to do it again? I finally got to the point, girl, I don't know. I can't answer that. How am I supposed to answer that? I don't know. I can't answer another question for another human being. Now, if you ask me, do I want him to do it again? No. What person wants to be cheated on? You tell me. You go find that person and tell me, and I want to let me talk to him because I don't think not one human being on the face of this earth ever wants to be cheated on. But it happens every day. It's happening now. It's been happening, and it's going to continue to happen, which is
Yeah,
awful.
and you're right. It's a part of life, unfortunately, and that's a question that a lot of people ask. Well, if you're gonna stay, if you're gonna, when, and I think they only ask it because, and let's step away from the infidelity for a minute. People that ask that question, they're only asking it because whatever it is that they're hearing is like, you know what? Because how do they follow it up? Will you actually stay? Well, I wouldn't stay. You're like, okay, fine. You know what? Yeah, my spouse cheated on me and you wouldn't stay, but your partner's doing this, but you don't hear me saying I wouldn't stay, right? Because of those reasons. Because it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how confident you are, how arrogant, how God's gift to men or women you think you are. Every single relationship has something wrong with it,
Yeah, I will agree in
right?
some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. And it all comes down to what are you willing to fit? How are you going to grow together to either minimize it or correct it? Because it's naive of us to think all these people on this planet, all these different experiences, You don't meet someone and day one you're 100% compatible. You got to put in work. You got
But
to work to get to that point. So fine, there's some things that I may not accept and there's some things you may not accept. But we shouldn't question it because just because you're willing to accept what I'm not willing to accept doesn't make you right, wrong, or indifferent. It just means that you're willing to work on it. And I'm willing to work on some things that maybe you wouldn't be able to work on. But I don't think people mean that when they ask those questions. They're just projecting, saying that, "Oh, you're going through that. I wouldn't go through it. You must think less of yourself." It was just no. Maybe I think more of myself. Maybe I think that, you know what, this is the person for me, and I want to be there on their road to redemption because I owe myself and this relationship, which I cherish, that.
yeah, I totally, yeah. And that too is, I feel like a lot of times people don't know what to ask. They don't know what to ask. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah, I mean, it leaves me thinking every time because when I think about that moment, Terrain, I just think, how did I ever get through that? When I think about that time, because we're talking about this is over 7 years ago now. This is not like it just happened yesterday. So when I think about it, it was just like, it was a dark time. It was a very dark time. So it took a lot of prayer, a lot of healing, a lot of self reflection. Therapy extremely helped because you can't face this alone. You just can't face it alone. And that's the stigma that we have to remove. Like, sometimes vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. It is okay for you to talk to somebody. And that's what we don't do enough. Because when I think about that time, if I had kept all that in, I mean, it wouldn't have been good, but I'm also not that person that's set up that way. I don't hold stuff in. I have to talk about it. I have to let it out. I have to release it because to me, it's like a rotten sour patch on the inside that's just growing. It's like a cancerous tumor that's just growing. And every time speaking about it just releases it and, reduces that tumor on the inside, just reduces it until it's gone.